So welcome. We are doing IBM Developer Office Hours here for Think. I am having a audio issue. Here we go. Oh, there we go. I muted it. Excellent. Now I can hear my guests. So welcome. I'm Luke. I'm an IBM Developer Advocate, and I'm here with Nanfi Yan and Steve Martinelli. And we are going to be talking about creating a low-code application, AI application, with IBM Cloud Pak for Data and Palantir. So I gave a very brief introduction there. Maybe we start with our guests and let them introduce themselves. So Nanfi, maybe say hello to our listeners and give us a brief self-introduction.
Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Nanfi. I'm based in California at the moment. Have been at Palantir for 5 years, and this year completely focusing on the partnership engagement with IBM, which is very, very exciting. And my job is primarily to talk about enablement and implementation of the platform. I'm so happy to address everyone's questions today.
Excellent. And Steven, please give us an introduction.
Hey, Luke. Nice to see you again. Nanfi, thanks for joining. My name is Steve Martinelli. I'm a senior technical staff member at IBM as part of the developer advocacy organization. And a little bit about me. I love all things open source, love Python, and I'm located in Toronto right now. So Nanfi, you've been wonderful to work with, and I very much enjoyed creating our session. And we've actually got a masterclass coming up in about an hour, right?
That we do.
Yeah, so looking forward to it.
So I caught your presentation, or I watched the video of it, and I really enjoyed it. And I must say, sometimes as a developer, I feel guilty for loving no-code and low-code tools so much. But I got so excited when I saw what was going on with the Palantir, UIs and workflows, and it's like this very semantic, like awesome, like just incredible capabilities, and then connecting with the data side from IBM through Cloud Pak. It just seemed like it was like that chocolate peanut butter moment, those two things coming together. So maybe let's just for folks who haven't caught this master class yet, because it's up and coming, let's just give them sort of the high level and whet their appetite.
Sure. So during the master class, so our on-demand session, which is what this office hours is for, we really kind of gave a brief glimpse of what Palantir and Cloud Pak for Data can do with the new offering called Cloud Pak for Data with Palantir. We just kind of like touched on it. During the master class, we're going to go much deeper. We're going to go really highlight the ontology that's created. And I think Shivam is going to try and create something kind of like from scratch. And Nanfi's going to show everything that's going on under the hood. I like what you said about you kind of feel guilty about liking these no-code, low-code applications, right? And I think, to an extent, I kind of agree with you, but at the same time, I think there's so much going on. If the tool is powerful enough, like what Palantir has, I'm okay with it, because I am not a front-end person. I like all the little widgets that are available to me there, and it's got all the integrations with Cloud Pak for Data under the covers, and you can write back your results. It's doing all this stuff, and I think for this sort of scenario, it makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the piece I would add to that is, our job as Palantir has always been to not replace skills, but to augment them. And I think every developer will agree, they do a lot of copy pasting of code. They do a lot of repeating the same code over and over again. They have to, write widgets, and a lot of that isn't interesting anymore. So really, I think it's no code, low code. I think the emphasis is that there's customization and kind of flexibility there. So if you like, putting some pretty fancy UX elements in, you can still do that, and we don't sort of block that away from the end user. But for all the kind of day-to-day repetitive work, that gets a lot easier, and hopefully then you get to enjoy the things that you like doing more and spend less time on repetitive coding.
For sure.
Yeah, what I love too. I remember from my college days, I was like really into studying, like semantic web and getting all excited, and I feel like the promise of it never really surfaced. It became like microdata or something. And then I saw like sort of what was underneath the hood when you were kind of going through these different layers of how the Palantir platform abstractions work. And you could see like underneath you had this, and you call it like an ontology layer, right? Business ontology. It is like this you in this on-demand session, you showed a whole supply chain from suppliers through shipping and warehousing and onto the end users, and it was all connected in like this dependency structure. But then you had different rules and widgets and all these things, so that you got to those like high level dashboards that let you see like actionable feedback like very easily. And so I was super excited by this, and it was like, this was actually my first introduction, but now I want to dig deeper and kind of play with it myself.
Yeah, and I think that piece was another thing that, yes, it helps the business end users understand the data more and it's more approachable, but it does save time, again, for the more technical folks. I think historically, when you're building out these business applications, you not only have to understand the business workflow, but also you have to understand all the underlying data and the nitty gritty. What's the schema of this? How often does that refresh? And just by abstracting that layer, you are allowing people to focus a lot more on the business logic and improving the features that the end user requests, versus being that glue constantly of just mending data together and stitching data together.
Yeah, and just kind of going back to like the idea of like no code, low code, I had never really had much experience creating solutions like this before. But I like what you said, Luke, about how the promise of it never really came up or something. I kind of felt that way too. But then, I started to use another service called Zapier recently, and it kind of, not exactly the same idea there, but it does have a bunch of tasks in there that you could write code for yourself, but instead they're giving you, just authenticate here and we'll do all the wiring underneath it to create the integration between these two third-party services that you use. So I think, it's slowly coming up to, to fruition, where the idea of a low-code, no-code application is kind of being more accepted. Because like Nancy mentioned, like, been there, done that with a lot of problems. We don't need to, recreate the wheel for every little problem that we run into, right?
Absolutely. And I think something Nancy also said that really resonated is like, if it's serving you and letting you go, farther, faster, but still lets you get under the hood when you need to. Because I feel like that's maybe one of the things that is a turnoff to a developer would be, you don't want it so abstracted away that you feel like you lose control, and now you have this tool that doesn't let you get to the specifics. But like you said too, there's so much repetitive work, especially in building, say, like a dashboard or a UI. And I know this is way more than a dashboard, but that level of it has to be that perfect blend where you can get under the hood when you need to, where you need to customize.
Yeah. And the other piece I would add to that is, I think a lot of applications, and as you spoke to this, there's the visualization layer, and that's really important. But that is sadly where a lot of applications stop, is that they become this visualization layer that doesn't really speak back to the business operations. And then really decisions are happening via Excel, emails, PowerPoints, phone calls. So the other piece that we're really keen on here is making sure that these are operational decision-making workflows. So that's the piece that is on top of ontologies. We support actions. And so actions are ways to actually write back to source systems and write back and really build on the business asset versus just displaying it and surfacing it to users.
I remember Steve saying something about that during the on-demand presentation, where he was like, he loved that you click something and you could see it feed back into the information as you made the action. So I wanted to ask a little bit about the integration point of and how that works between the Cloud Pak for Data and Palantir. Like break that down for us a little bit.
All right, I'm going to give the layman's explanation, and Nancy can correct me on everything that I say here. But okay, so if you've used Cloud Pak for Data before, Cloud Pak for Data as a service, you might be familiar with things like Watson Knowledge Catalog. So you have your data sources and plug in your databases and all that. And so your data is available to you. Maybe you create a notebook that creates a model. But in this specific scenario, there's two integration points that are needed. The first being, using Watson Knowledge Catalog to kind of more define the data properly so that you can build your ontology that's required in Palantir. And secondly, the other integration point is between Watson machine learning. because then again, the Palantir will be able to go and read the models, it knows how to use the models that are available on Watts machine learning so that you can see them in things like the dashboard or the in the workshop piece, right?
Yep. I think you got it spot on. So those are the two elements, and it brings in, I think, the three building blocks of any good workflow we see, which is the data, the models, and then that kind of end user application layer. So we're actually really excited about this partnership and in sort of leveraging the strengths of our combined platforms, because these are three areas where historically it's super siloed. The data science, part of the org of most clients, they're building models in a silo. They might, showcase it as a proof of concept, but it rarely plugs into operations in a seamless manner. And then same for data assets. I think data democratization is the name of the game these days. And not just that, but paired with the governance that Cloud Pak for Data provides means that you're able to share data and sort of organize and manage it in a really seamless manner. And with those two pieces plugged into Palantir's end user applications, I think, this is really taking that AI infused dream into reality.
Mm-hmm. And looks like we have a question here. So it says, how do we begin with a low-code AI application? What all prerequisites are required? What are the prerequisites? I think if we're just talking like from the Palantir side, specifically for the Palantir for Cloud Pak for Data offering, to create a low-code AI application, I think it depends on what you want your application to do. I think the minimum prerequisite is to have your data in Cloud Pak for Data, kind of have your metadata defined in Watson Knowledge Catalog, and then you can load it up there, and then you can start creating your low-code application in Palantir from that point. And then creating the model may be an additional step that you choose to take.
Yes. So I think just to expand on that, essentially you would take whatever data sets you need to build that ontology. So you connect the WKC catalog data sets, you form ontology objects out of them. And once you have those objects, a lot of the visualization and application layers we have is pretty much out of the box. So you'll be able to explore them, you'll be able to see the linkages between them, and you can kind of configure the views that reflect the data you have on those objects. And then kind of setting up actions to support your workflows is pretty simple, just point and click.
That's great. I'm putting some of these links that Steve had shared with me up here, which I think will help folks. And we have another question that just came up. Well, first of all, Florencio, he says this is an awesome session. What do you think of applying AI to the application development process itself? I believe an example of all the connections and authentications would be handled by AI DevOps bot. What do you think? Or is that sort of what's going on in the covers, is you don't really have to worry about a lot of that stuff. If you've got these models, you've got these data objects connected through an ontology, once you set it up that way, you don't actually have to do a lot of the...
Yeah, so I think a couple of pieces to this question here. On the connections and authentication piece, that's definitely just handled already by the software. So you're not manually trying to set up connections each time. If anything, you can set up a schedule that refreshes on sort of the need basis of your workflow. I think the first part, though, applying AI to the application development process is actually super fascinating. I think at Palantir, I'm curious what the IBM opinion here is, but at Palantir, I think we've always found there's a pretty fine line between, automating too much and the end user no longer has access to customizing it to their needs, no longer understands really what's going on, versus the augmentation piece. So for the application development, I think we have a concept of archetypes and IBM has a concept of accelerators. So these are more building blocks and blueprints you can apply to your use cases versus, automating away the entire development process.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to actually, just on the topic of applying AI to the application development kind of process, is if you Google for IBM Research CLI, or if you go to github.com/IBM/CLAI, see if I can see if it's possible to put that link back in the chat, Luke.
Yep, I will do that.
There's a really cool project by IBM Research that kind of tries to take it's a plugin to your command line, and it'll suggest if there was an error or something to a command that you're writing, it'll actually suggest what it thinks is the right one. So just it's kind of like AI is kind of bleeding into the different parts of all application development. So from handling things like the authentication to creating visualizations to even the CLI. So pretty cool.
So we have another sort of question here. Well, it's definitely a question. It's an undergraduate student who's working on the use of AI in logistics of ports. And he's asking if there's any use of these applications that could be applied to this topic. And I was thinking he should definitely check out your on-demand session and probably your upcoming masterclass, because it sounds like that's right on for what he's looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, for the supply chain demo that was shown during the on-demand session, that's exactly what's happening. Is when you have so many moving pieces, especially if you're hoping to create that digital twin of your supply chain, it becomes pretty impossible for a single human to, navigate all that information and figure out what the best thing to do is. And so what we take is, again, leveraging, the AI capabilities of Watson machine learning, using that to optimize the decision-making of when there is disruption to the supply chain, maybe in your example, the ports, what are the workarounds, and how do we weigh the risks of each workaround and how that will solve the solution. And then ultimately, though, going back to the augmentation of the user, you have the option of just automating away everything. But in this case, there's always the flexibility of surfacing those decision possibilities weighted to the end user. And then the end user can ultimately make the decision on what to do.
And I don't have much to add to that. Unfortunately, my knowledge about logistics of ports and shipping is limited to pretty whatever I learned in the demo. So I'm going to trust Nancy on that answer.
Well, it's fascinating. And I think, given the state of the world today, you can really see, just look at this last couple of months, the amount of logistics challenges that have surfaced, with the pandemic, and then also the boat in the Suez Canal. I think, these types of tools are needed more so now than ever. And part of what you were saying, it's, I think it's that same journey we've experienced throughout all of the development of these abstractions is, we need to focus our attention as developers and businesses on that part of, innovation and providing better customer service and getting things done versus like recreating the wheel or doing the same thing over and over. So this, it seems like this is an excellent tool. We got a bunch of thank yous for answering the questions in the chat. And we had someone posted the link to the on-demand. They asked me to do it, and one of our viewers did it for them. So that was super sweet. Thank you.
I like that you managed to squeeze in the evergreen and the containers session in this topic. It's not even about Kubernetes, and you managed to squeeze in a container reference. That's pretty awesome.
I had an interesting one earlier, which is a different use case, but or different thing. But I feel like there's a similar theme here too. I did a session on Code Engine earlier, and it's very interesting there too. How it's we're seeing this similar theme, right? Of like being able to go deep under the covers and have complete control when you need to, but also making it simple so that you can get this velocity and you're not spending time, because even things that seem trivial to actually do the work, right? I'm renovating a home now, and it's like, hanging a door seems pretty simple, or putting up some drywall, and it's still work to do those things. And like you were saying, just building some dashboard, let alone getting it to be some, dynamic feedback with like an, semantic underlaying, functions. It's like, now it's
I remember, just on that same kind of topic, on that same kind of thought process, before we didn't, sometime last year, before the partnership with Palantir was a thing, I had to create this is a very common use case, right? You create a model and you want some application to score some data, score some input against that model, and give you a confidence, right? Yes or no, or some confidence, right? So we had created the model, we had found our data source, created the model, and the customer or the customer wanted a simple web interface to score some input, score some data against it. And yeah, it's exactly what you said. Like, it took me, I got it done, but it didn't look nearly as nice as whatever was done in Palantir. And it was more code that I had to maintain now. And it probably had a tenth of the functionality of what you could just drag and drop onto the workspace, onto the workshop feature in Palantir. So yeah, I mean, like, you think it's going to be easy, but it's it's always work in the end. And yeah, it just makes sense. I really like this peanut butter chocolate analogy that you had early on in the call. It just made sense.
Thank you for liking that. And the other one that came to mind was, in like the world of, especially like music, entertainment, fashion, and like streetwear, there's like all these like collabs are happening, right? Where you're going to get like this musician making the sneaker. And I feel like that's what's like starting to happen now at the enterprise level. It's like two enterprises come together and they like, do this release. We dropped the Cloud Pack with Palantir.
It's the Off-White Nike collaboration.
Yeah.
Very good. I like that.
I actually took a course last year, like an online course during the pandemic at Parsons on streetwear. So my head is like in the game. It's it's fascinating stuff.
No insider scoops about future collaborations for now.
Yeah, but we don't have any exclusive leaks here. We're not gonna.
No. This isn't no trailers are gonna drop. Don't worry.
So we are getting close. We have just a few minutes left. So I would like to say, anybody who's listening has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We can squeeze in a few more of those. But I would like to also, considering everything we've talked about here, make sure you both have enough time to sort of have any closing thoughts or impart any things. And I think calls to action. I think a lot of folks. We had a question about this earlier about how do I get started. So maybe that would be a good question here. It's like, if folks hear this, they're interested, what are the next steps they should take to explore this?
I think we have, you flashed the link earlier. I'm going to see if I can find it. On the developer website. Yeah. The developer.
Okay.
The developer website. I think that is probably going to give you a pretty solid. At least you can see some things. You can see some tutorials or something. And we're hoping to have more tutorials out there, kind of like showing folks how to walk through a process about how to get up and running. And if you want to get familiar with Cloud Pak for Data, there's Cloud Pak for Data as a service that's available. Just give that a quick Google. I'm sure the first link is probably the right one. And you can sign in and get started for free. It won't have the Palantir offering, but you can at least get familiar with Cloud Pak for Data as a service. And it's free, so that's good.
Well, and it sounds like you would need, if you want to connect the data there anyway, you're going to need to be familiar with that service and get your data in there and have your models.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly true, right? So if you do plan on using the Palantir solution, then yeah, getting familiar with probably the free service is the best way to probably get started if you want to keep your costs low.
And how about obviously we have the link up here, Nanfei, but from the Palantir side, any words of wisdom for getting started or tips and tricks or?
No, I think Steve covered it. So once you have Cloud Pak for Data, I believe instructions are available on how to install the Palantir portion. And it should be pretty easy from there. Excited for everyone to sort of get more involved. And I think, just to close on my end, we've been speaking a lot about the front-end elements and the models, but obviously a really big part of it is just the data and getting that to be well managed. So really leveraging the Cloud Pak powers there. So encourage everyone to get more familiar with it.
I will say really quickly, Nancy and the rest of her team have been amazing at getting us, a whole bunch of us IBMers up and skilled up and using Palantir tools. And within the Palantir tool itself, there are often a lot of self-guided tutorials and labs and exercises. And they are wonderful and get you really caught up to speed really quickly. So I'm assuming that they're already in there in the product, and folks who actually end up with the with the product are going to have a really easy time to get started with it.
Excellent. And I'm dropping these links. It was requested that these links get dropped into the chat. So I'm dropping the links in the chat there. So anybody who's in that room, the swap chat has these links in there. So, well, thank you so much for your time. This has really been a pleasure. I would love, I do the IBM Developer Podcast and live streaming. So I feel like I would love to follow back up after Think and the dust settles, and maybe we could get some more content and explore this a little bit more.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much.
All right. See
Thanks,
you later.
everyone.
Thanks, Nancy.
Well, hello, everybody. It is now my turn to kind of take this and run with this. And I have two great friends of mine coming in here in just a second. Say hi, Tim.
Hi, Tim. Hey, JJ.
Nice. Awesome. Hi, how you doing, buddy?
Good, good. It's great out here
Good.
today.
Wonderful. And Jesse. Jesse is a friend I have not met yet. How are you doing, Jesse?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, good. So we are here at our office hours to talk about y'all's presentation and how Think is going for you in general. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Tim, because I'm allowed to. Can you TLDR your presentation for us and kind of what is something you wish you could have said, but due to the constraints of presenting, you weren't able to get across?
Sure. Thanks, JJ. So I think that the TLDR on our presentation is when you're looking at taking an application that you've got currently running on upstream Kubernetes and moving it to OpenShift, there's a few things you need to take into consideration and a few things you'll have to change. But really, once you know what those things are, it's not a lot of work. And there are probably a few of them are things you probably should have been doing anyway if you weren't already doing them. So, and I think that the goal of our presentation was just sort of talk through in sort of a narrative format back and forth between Jesse and myself about the journey that LifeRay, Jesse, and myself had almost a year ago when we were first getting LifeRay running on Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud. And I would say in some ways it was a learning journey for me just as much as it was for Jesse. We had done these kinds of migrations with other partners. We started to see an emerging set of patterns of things that you run into. Things like being mindful of, the user ID that your container process needs to run as. Being mindful about how, when you're running as a particular user ID, persistent data is accessed. And then thinking about how you link up and choose dependencies, whether you run dependencies and satisfy them by deploying them within your OpenShift cluster, or if you consume those dependencies as part of a managed service on the cloud platform. And when you're consuming them as a managed service, what are some of the characteristics that you might need to deal with that are unique? Like, how do you deal with things like, in our case, it was getting a CA certificate for a service that's signed with a private CA, making sure that CA certificate was available to the JVM so that the JVM could make a secure JDBC connection to that database. So those are the kinds of things that we ran across, and we were able to cover a lot of them. I do think that there's a lot of deep detail, and we've got some more material coming on IBM Developer about some of these journeys, things about this use of security context constraints, and also about general things that you want to think about with regards to container security and migrating to upstream Kubernetes.
Nice. Thanks for that, Tim. So Jesse, same question to you. What is something you wish you could have gotten across in the presentation that you just didn't have time for?
Well, as Tim mentioned, there were a number of differences between just regular Kubernetes environment and OpenShift, in particular about the security context constraints, and as Tim mentioned, being mindful of the user ID and group ID that your container processes are running as. And I guess one topic that we weren't able to get to during the presentation is the difference between IBM Cloud's classic infrastructure and VPC infrastructure. So one of the POC projects that we're currently working on right now is preparing LifeRay to be deployed on IBM Cloud's FS Cloud platform, which requires the VPC infrastructure. So we've been learning a little bit about that environment and some of the differences in terms of available storage classes and security practices with that environment.
So being that you're just dipping your toe into this world, there's a strong possibility some of the people watching on the different streaming platforms we're touching right now have no idea what a VPC is. So Jesse, to you, what is a VPC?
Yeah, a VPC is a virtual private cloud environment. So it's a way to collect your cloud resources in a particular network so that they can't be accessed or access any outside resources. It's basically a network protection layer, I guess you could describe it as.
Okay. You mentioned the classic and the VPC, the differences in having to deal with that with with the IBM Cloud in general. So what are the stumbling blocks? Okay, so we talked about getting the application working on OpenShift, which admittedly a lot of people have stumbling blocks originally because everyone runs as root, right? I swear, everyone runs as root. No? Yes? No, you're not supposed to. Don't do that. Don't do that. And OpenShift forces you to make sure you don't do that. But when we start looking at the infrastructure and running OpenShift on IBM Cloud, Tim, what are some of the lessons you've learned walking down that path?
Yeah, so there are some features which we see in VPC in terms of network performance and capabilities of the workers, which really is, I would say, greater than our classic offering, unless you're going into where you're going to be using like bare metal systems in classic. And I think that's one of the trade-offs that we sort of still see is the availability of different kinds of systems profiles as we continue to enhance and extend the capabilities in the VPC side of things. We also have some really high performance, worker classes that are available in Classic, and those would be things like our bare metal servers. So right now, when we talk to partners, we're typically asking them questions about a few different dimensions of what they need to do. When we were first looking at Liferay a year ago, we were going with the quickest way to migrate their application, knowing that they needed both file and block-based storage. And so those are available as a service, easy to consume with storage classes within IBM Cloud on Red Hat OpenShift. Whereas if I want to use file-based access, I've got to look at a couple of other ways to expose that in VPC environments today. So I can get a block service through a storage class, and if I want a file-based service, I can do something like setting up, OpenShift container storage in the platform, or setting up Portworx, or using something like the S3 Fuse plugin, so that I am actually using persistence out to object storage. And I think, Jesse, that's the one that you're currently looking at right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. We were looking at using the S3FS plugin because I think by default the storage volumes available in the VPC environment are only the block storage volumes. So if you want read, write, many access, like we would like for Liferay DXP's document library to be able to be mounted to multiple Liferay nodes at once, we need that read, write, many access.
Nice.
So that's what we're using the S3FS plugin for.
Nice. Have you had was it relatively easy to implement the S3 Fuse Fuse plugin? Was it easy for you when you started walking down that path, Jesse?
Yeah, I was actually just working on that this morning, actually. And it was easy to set up with the public endpoint. We did run into one issue getting the private endpoint working correctly, but yeah, I expect we'll be able to figure that out pretty soon.
Was it DNS? It was DNS.
I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
You must have see my tweet the other day, JJ. It's always DNS.
Exactly. It's always DNS. It's not DNS. It was DNS. Awesome. Well, okay. So, am I still here? Good. Perfect. Yeah, computers, right? So we played around. We understand where Liferay and OpenShift kind of come together. And we've played with the classic and the VPC infrastructure, where obviously moving towards the VPC is a preferred path. What's another stumbling block that you've kind of, as you were walking down these lessons learned, that you kind of hit that you were just like, wasn't expecting that one?
Well, I would say, working through a lot of the documentation on the IBM Cloud website, it is fairly extensive, and it can be a little bit overwhelming to find what you're looking for. And then when you find the right section, you have to try to look at the example there and translate that to your particular use case. So yeah, I would say we did encounter some challenges with trying to adapt and extract the right information from the documentation, but yeah, that's where it was extremely helpful to have a resource like Tim, so we can just, ask him, even which document should we look at for solving this particular problem or what have you.
I'll be honest. Tim is an amazing resource to leverage whenever I need him to. Just saying, he's amazing. I do want to say though, we recently did release something on our docs where if you look at the very top, there's the API, the CL, or the GUI, CLI, and API options now. Which, to your point, Jesse, it's a tidal wave of information. It's very verbose, and some of our UX designers realized, well, sometimes when you're looking at something, you want to just find the CLI. Why do I care about the API or anything like that? So they created that little bar right there, so you can just click on it and it will flip it, so you can actually read it in a useful way. So hopefully you can take another look at that, and maybe that'll help some things on the line. But for you, Tim, what was something that caught you by surprise?
Well, I think, and we do talk about this in our presentation. There's a few different kinds of storage classes that you can choose from when you're using IBM Cloud, and not just file, versus block. So read write once versus read write many, but we also have what we call our retained storage classes. Oh. And and so this notion of a retained storage class really comes from like the upstream Kubernetes. And the idea behind this is when I create a PVC, if I use, and a PVC is just a request for some persistent storage from my cloud provider. So when I create a PVC, a persistent volume claim, I can choose the storage class that I'm going to get with that, and I can choose one that might say it either doesn't have retain or it does have retain. You're thinking, well, when I remove that PVC later, maybe there's something like in Jesse's example, this document store. Maybe I don't want to lose all that stuff. So maybe I want to use that retained storage class. I mean, that seems like a good idea. Maybe that will keep things around for me. And yes, it does that. But there's a word of caution around it, is that it's not just as simple as I make a request, with a particular name of a PVC using a retained storage class, and then I delete that PVC, like I remove a deployment like a Helm chart deployment. And then I just create another same named thing with that retained class, thinking it's just going to magically pick whatever was saved from before. Doesn't do it that way. So that's now, but on IBM Cloud, like the other cloud providers, we follow the standard, Kubernetes semantics for what retain means. And that means you actually have to take some extra steps to recover that. But it's true that when I delete that claim for the volume, the persistent volume behind that isn't removed. It's still sitting out there. But I do have to take about 4 extra steps, which I could automate if I wanted to. They're not too bad. But I'd have to take those steps. And so I think when Liferay was doing their testing, they went through a series of deployments, each using a retained class, and we just kept seeing more and more volumes appearing in the accounts. Going like, wait a sec, they're not getting reused, and so that was one where let's find that piece of the documentation which shows what those 4 steps are, right? So that was one of those things, and I think it's a really small plug I'll put in for our team, the hybrid cloud build team. When we're engaging with a partner, one of the things that we find that we can help them most with is helping them sort of find that sometimes maybe almost the needle of the haystack in our documentation. All cloud providers have complex documentation because all clouds are complex. But that's something that we can really do. We try to accelerate things to make sure that how to find the piece of information you're looking for is easy to get. And it's great that our UX team has been working on this too, because it's wonderful to have better information out there and easy to access.
All I heard was Tim is Jesse's documentation Sherpa. That's literally all I heard. It's good stuff. So yeah. Oh, there you go. Nice. So Jesse, so we talked about some problems and some solutions, some situations. What is something? Let's try to switch this positive. What is something that you completely you came out of the blue and you're like, wow, that's actually really cool. I mean, every engineering, every project, you have one of those moments. What was yours for this?
Yeah, I guess one thing that I didn't realize going into this project with working with OpenShift was how convenient the Docker container registry is, being built into OpenShift and integrated with IBM Cloud's container registry. So we were able to, just with a couple lines in our shell scripts for our build and deployment processes, just automatically build and push our Liferay Docker images, whether we would need to make some changes to them during our testing cycle. We were able to just push them up, and then they automatically get updated in the container registry. And we haven't gotten as far as building out our complete CI/CD pipeline, but I can definitely see the value in being able to hook into that container registry, look for changes, and then kick off certain processes.
Nice. So you're talking about your CI and CD there for a moment. Can you go into that a little bit deeper? Like how valuable is CI and CD? And then what path have you chosen? Because there's like a trillion now of how to do CI and CD. That was a joke. My jokes are always great when I have to tell people that was a joke. It shows I'm a great interviewer. No, I'm kidding. Again, a joke. But yeah. So anyway, CI/CD, Jesse. What path did you choose or are choosing, and what brought you down to that point?
Yeah. Well, let's see. With a lot of Liferay clients, Jenkins is a very popular choice. We've used that in a lot of projects, and yeah, when working with Liferay application development, it's very convenient to be able to make some changes and not have to manually perform each step of building the application, manually deploying it, managing different environments like dev and QA and prod and so forth. So to be able to automate all that, just to specify which environment I want this particular change to go through and have all the artifact creation and deployment steps automated is, really valuable.
Sweet. So Tim, I know you're very strongly opinionated in the CI and CD's ecosystem. What's something that you wish you could tell more people about your CI and CD stories?
So I think one part would be, keep your CI something that you're going to do all the time, right? Okay. And all as much as you can. And the other part too is, if you are going to look at, supporting, Red Hat OpenShift, coming from Kubernetes, just because you've got an existing CI system that builds containers, you don't have to do anything different, right? Red Hat OpenShift can consume that same set of container images you're building with that CI platform today. Now, on the D side of it, flexibility seems to be the order of the day. Some are going to want to have Jenkins be a way. There's Tecton. There's also the new stuff that's coming in with Argo, coming in with later versions of OpenShift. So there on the deployment side, we tend to push people towards thinking about the GitOps approach, because it seems to really lend itself well to scaling and dealing with different kinds of environments. And especially when I have sort of embraced this idea where I do CI all the time, with my existing system, and then I only deploy out in various locations, based on those environments when they need it at those times. So I would like that. There are some things you might want to think about when you are going to OpenShift. Again, it's if you were doing stuff with Docker files that were using user 0 or not specifying a user, then that's one part of your CI you are going to have to change, right? And the other part too, I think, getting back to the whole permissions of the user that are being used, that the container user ID, that how do I access things in the file system, the container image, that the other part is, think about using group IDs, right? Group ID, doing something like if you everywhere within your container image, if you're doing something like a change group recursive to group ID 0, and then changing recursive permissions from user to group, then when your container starts, even if it's running with a sort of almost arbitrary UID, it's still going to have access to GID 0. So your container process will be able to access what it needs to access within that container image file system. And I guess I could go on, and I sort of am. But a lot of people who struggle with this sort of going from, I was running on Kubernetes, now I go to OpenShift, is they've almost taken the old model. I was running on a multi-tenant system, and the first thing I did was I had to use a privileged user to change a bunch of permissions in a file system. You don't need to do that with a container image build process. You never need to change those privileges. You should be building from the start with all of that privileged stuff in your CI platform, and never think about doing that at container start, pod start, etc.
Nice. Okay. Well, we are getting close to the time that allotted for us. I want to make sure that I reiterate that every time we're talking here, we have multiple different chat platforms, and I'm looking at most of them. Is there any questions that we can ask Tim or Jesse here? I'll give it a couple seconds because I know there's a little bit of a delay. But I would love to ask something from the audience. Hello. Well, while we're waiting for some questions, Jesse, is there anything you'd like to mention to this audience that you have an opportunity to now?
Yeah, I would just say, I think what Tim was just talking about with respect to the user ID and group ID that a particular container process is running as, and OpenShift security context constraints, figuring all that out and how to do that the right way probably was the most challenging part about getting this whole LifeRay project up and running correctly. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say using the CLI tools to be able to grab all that information from IBM Cloud itself, and then be able to extract that information and get those user IDs and group IDs into a Helm chart or a shell script or wherever it needs to go. Definitely helped us out.
By the way, I'm LifeRay certified 6, if I remember correctly. I feel
nice.
Yeah, I took a course on that, and I never used it, but I took the course. So Tim, is there anything you'd like to tell this audience while we have a couple moments?
Yeah, I think I'd sort of like summarize. One of the things I was sort of saying towards the end of the presentation is, OpenShift as a platform, is implemented around the Kubernetes API, and although it has some opinions and extensions around them, all of the things that you use in Kubernetes work in OpenShift, and because after all, OpenShift is Kubernetes. You've heard the term SCC, security context constraints, railed around a few times. If you've been using on upstream Kubernetes pod security constraints, and that's a similar kind of thing, almost nearly identical. So those are things that are evaluated at the mission controller. And I mean, the main difference I'd say between SCCs and RBAC, which probably everybody is familiar with, is that you can think of RBAC as being core to the platform control, what you can do with the Kubernetes API and how you can allow particular entities, service accounts, et cetera, to do various things with the Kubernetes API. When it comes to control of the infrastructure and then securing what it is that a particular process, a container running in a Kubernetes cluster can do, that's where your pod security policies or security context constraints come into play. And they work together to give you control and security in a Kubernetes and OpenShift environment.
Awesome. Well, I guess thank y'all for your time. And Jesse, do you mind if the people here reach out to you? Do you have contact information that we can give out?
Yeah, I can definitely provide my email address. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. No, I guess that's good. I guess.
Can you put it in the little chat real quick, and I can just copy and paste it and put it as a little banner? Tim, do you mind doing that also for me so I can just get it out there?
Yeah, that'd be great. Appreciate it.
Amazed. Yeah, you'd be amazed on who will actually reach out to you from these things.
And also, you could probably find both of us on the Kubernetes at IBM Cloud platform Slack, public Slack.
Nice, awesome. Yeah. And Simple Old Games says, "Thank you very much for this talk. He greatly appreciates it." That's from Twitch. So we do have people actually listening to us.
Yay! Thank you, JJ.
All right. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry. Let me. Of course, I get distracted. And one last time, make sure we have it. Here is Jesse and 1 second. I swear I'm going to do this real quick. Their email addresses. Really? Oh, jeez. Well, here's Tim's. Because computers. All right, I'll put it in the chats for each of our different systems. Thank y'all so much, and I look forward to seeing y'all again.
All right, thank
Bye.
you all. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
And thank you, y'all, for sticking around. I'm going to go ahead and we are going to be off for about 20 or 30 minutes. The stream will be still going. But we have our next office hours coming up. We have a little bit of a lunch break right now, just to make sure that we got some time. But I'll be watching the chat still. So if you have any questions or thoughts, don't hesitate to throw them in there. Thanks, everybody. Okay, hopefully I'm live and hopefully people can hear me. If I can get a +1 or something along those lines in the chats, that would be wonderful just to see that people can hear me. Hopefully I'm not too choppy. My computer is not very happy right now, but that's the way these things go. Wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce y'all to two of my new friends, Robbie and I'm sorry, Galini. I can't pronounce your name. I'll bring Robbie in first. Hey, Robbie, how are you, sir?
Good. Getting late here in Europe.
It's I can only imagine time zones are a problem for everybody. And I'll go ahead and bring in. I'm so sorry. How do I say your name?
Galchin.
Galgin. Nice.
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Galgin.
Nice meeting you, JJ. Good afternoon, Robbie. Welcome again.
Nice.
Thank you.
So yeah, let's quickly go around. Robbie, how about you start, then Galgin, and then I'll introduce myself so we can kind of get some level set. So Robbie, who are you?
My name is Robbie van Damme. I'm CTO for a Belgian software company called Pearlchain. We've been working with IBM for the last year, so that's why I am here actually. And worked with Galgin on the migration towards Postgres in the cloud. And this is why we did a presentation on how that went and what were the experiences. Next to that, I'm also quite heavily busy with other people from IBM, amongst others, with distributed clouds. So that's actually another topic on which I did a presentation for IBM Think, both in the Americas and in Europe. And as you can see, I play guitar. And the rest of my family also plays some music, so I have quite a busy life.
Nice.
Next to that, I also grow my own vegetables. If you're interested in,
Oh,
we do all kinds of different stuff here.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. And Galgin, can you introduce yourself for me, please?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Galchin Sherpa. I'm a cloud developer here at IBM, and I work with Robbie for the migration of database from MS SQLs to IBM Managed Cloud Postgres database. And yeah, so towards my hobby, I'm by name Sherpa. I like trekking. Trekking and also going with a group up in the Himalayas. And I'm very glad to hear that Robbie been one of the top in one of the mountains in Nepal, and that was really surprising to hear that from you, Robbie. That was awesome.
That's great.
Well,
Very cool. And yes, my name is JJ Asgar. I'm a developer advocate for the IBM Cloud. Hopefully I'm not too choppy as my screen is going back and forth. And we are here to talk about y'all's presentation, and hopefully people have watched it and or seen the on-demand version of it, and they have an opportunity to ask some questions. So hopefully we will see some questions pop up in the chat. I'm watching both YouTube and Twitch at the moment. So if you have any questions or thoughts, please don't hesitate to throw them in there. But let's go ahead and, Robbie, I'm going to ask you the first one here. How about you TLDR your presentation and kind of just give us a general idea of what you presented here at Think for this office hours.
Can you please explain me what TLDR means? Because I'm not familiar with that term.
Sure. Too long didn't read. It's a little bit of an internet joke to basically give me a summary. It's a summary of a summary, if you will.
Yeah.
When you get that big old wall of text from your boss, you're just like, I need the TLDR. This is way too much information for me.
Your 2 minutes of fame with the big boss, and where you need to make your presentation or break it.
Exactly.
So let's see. Well, the point of the matter is that if you are attempting something like what we did, you don't want things to drag on. Yeah.
Okay.
You want to have a predictable path. And obviously, you know, as a CTO, I've hired people. We've sometimes you go looking for talent that has a specific expertise. But here we were looking at a one-time activity of supporting a migration, and we wanted to make sure everything went like, not say smooth, because that is not how these things go, but that you have something that you can count on. And then bringing in an external expert that can advise certain solutions or that can help getting things done is just a valuable exercise. So that's one thing, which is the management perspective of this. And then obviously on the other side, if you look at the techniques that we use, because there might be people in the audience that are more coming in it from a development perspective, looking to do a similar thing. There are a number of tools that we presented that you can dive into. There's also some code that Georgian has shared that you can actually dive into to do this kind of thing yourself. And there is a number of aspects that we ran into that I shared some experiences and some best practices, some knowledge about. Obviously, this is the tip of an iceberg. Everybody that is looking at migrating their own applications can run into different concerns depending on the nature of the application. So it will always be a specific exercise that you will have to go through, obviously.
Cool. So what is Galjan, I'll ask you the question after this one, but Robbie, what was something that just completely surprised you as you were walking down this path in this project? That you were just like, oh, that was not what I was expecting to happen, or that was really painful, or that was actually really cool. Whatever you choose to choose, but there was something that's bound to have surprised you, and what was that?
Well, actually, I can't say I was really super surprised at any stage. That I cannot say. That's because I went into it not expecting. Well, first of all, I had some experience with Postgres, but and we knew it was an enterprise-grade application. It's nice to see that it is it's well supported on the IBM cloud. We knew the main factor for us to choose for it was also cost. It's very cost efficient, next to being obviously enterprise grade. And well, let's say if I would say there was one nasty surprise, then it would be on the technical side, on the concrete support for certain isolation levels. Now, I'm not sure whether you know what isolation levels are, but people that are deep into database technology might know this, and it has quite the impact on the functional behavior of or the non-functional behavior of an application in terms of concurrency and scalability of your database. And you might even run into bugs or unexpected functional behavior because the very detailed behavior is slightly off versus what you might be used to. And these are tricky things to get right off of that, and it can take a lot of time or even go undetected after you've gone into production.
Interesting. So Galjan, the same question to you. As you were doing this project, obviously as an IBMer, you have a little bit more background knowledge, I guess is a good way to describe it. But what was something that surprised you as you were working through this project?
Like Robbie, nothing surprising, but I really like customers moving to Postgres because that's really a low cost and it's highly efficient, and that's completely comparable with Oracle and MS SQL, which is open source as well. And people might compare this with MySQL, but it is not. It's only the comparison you can do with Postgres with MySQL is open source. Other than that, is absolutely enterprise grade and high availability. And I absolutely love and encourage customers using Postgres. Those who tend to move from Oracle or MS SQL from Microsoft.
You say that Postgres is enterprise grade, and yes, I can say that at one point in my career, when I was not an IBMer, I actually got to work with the largest Postgres database on the planet. It was for an email company at the time, and we pushed it to its limit, and it was amazing how robust it really truly was. But obviously, that stuff doesn't come up overnight. And what's one of the for you, Robbie? When you were working with moving things into the enterprise offerings and the enterprise database level, and especially moving from MS SQL into this space, what is something that you wish you could tell people initially so that they're prepared for moving into this ecosystem?
Well, our users don't really know. So obviously we are a software provider, and we are moving into software as a service towards our customers, which means our choice of database is a choice, an internal choice for us, and we try to keep that away because we are delivering software and a solution and not a database. So I would say the people to convince and the people working with it are the people in our support, in our development teams that are on the day-to-day engaging with the database, because that's the main storage of data, the main persistence layer for our application. And obviously the change to make has a lot to do with knowledge, with expertise. It has to do with not just how you develop with it, because obviously we used Hibernate already, so we have an ORM that abstracts away a lot of the SQL from the day-to-day coding. But don't underestimate the changes that you need to make on the support side, on the administration and operations side, and on the fact that there are always here and there these little customizations where you do rely on a stored procedure, you do rely on a job that you have scheduled or an interface that is going through a linked server. And well, those are the hurdles
yes,
you need to get over. And of course, on the very high level, that's just budget. But on the personal level, it can become annoying because people want to be efficient, they want to be performing, and anything that comes in between that and their target is gonna be something to manage. So it's important to keep the end goal, to keep people informed on why you're doing certain things, as you are going through these more, let's say, technical nuisances that you might encounter.
The gotchas, if you will, that you completely forgot that there's that one cron job that runs and does that thing. So Gaijin, the same question to you. So what are something like when you talk to clients that are doing this migration, what is something you wish they had known when they first started this process?
I don't really.
Okay, that's fine.
Not comes in my head right now, but I mean, clients they already studied and known well, and that's one reason I think customers are interested. But then the one thing is that customer wants to know. Wants to know is that how efficient IBM has made and how easy it is made for them to, efficient and easily migrate with no time. And those things maybe a lot of customers don't know, and also how easy it is to migrate from any database to IBM Cloud Managed Postgres database. So,
Well, to be honest with you, there's still a lot of people out there that don't actually know IBM has a cloud.
yeah,
believe it or
right.
not. Yeah, they're like it's just the idea that IBM has a cloud that you can use, but it is enterprise grade, and we really do, to your point, try to make it as easy as possible to onboard onto it. And then you're running on real IBM supported infrastructure and hardware with managed offerings like this Postgres offering, and you have some of the best and brightest making sure that Robbie's database is in a safe space, right?
And one of the things that we're working on now is that we want to automate this so that customer can actually work by themselves to migrate the whole database. So this will be a work in progress, and that even we're looking to make it more efficient to do this migration process.
Nice. So I'm watching the different chats we have, and I do want to make sure that we're coming out to the halfway point of this conversation, and I want to make sure if anyone has any questions or thoughts that they put it in the chat so we can get to it. So Robbie, you said you're growing some vegetables. What vegetables are you growing?
Oh my friend, you get half an hour. Actually, I don't know whether I know all the English words for it, but let's say it starts with, for example, spinach early in spring, because I have a greenhouse. So I grow tomatoes, cucumber, pumpkins, watermelons, all that kind of stuff, but also lettuce, carrots, radishes, cauliflower, broccoli, onions, celery, potatoes, a whole bunch of different things. And that's just the vegetables, because we get fruit in the garden too. So it's a hobby of ours. We get quite a big garden, actually.
Nice. That's awesome. I live in Austin, Texas, and we have our jalapenos and habaneros down here. So I spend a lot of time in the pepper space.
I tried pepper already once, but it wasn't a very big success. So it's not really part of our menu also. So, and it doesn't make much sense to vegetables that you then don't eat, right?
Yep, absolutely. Well, I'm a Texan. We like our spicy food down here.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm still watching the chat, and no one's bringing in some questions. So let's Galjian, let's start with you. Is there something you wish you could tell the audience from your presentation that you may have had to cut out because of the time constraints? Is there a story or something you'd like to tell them that would be interested in someone taking your presentation and leveraging it to help them move forward?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I really encourage all the audience to migrate Postgres IBM managed PostgreSQL, which is really easy. So one thing that we miss in the is that due to the time constraint, we're not able to do end-to-end migration. So we left the transformation part where we got a backup file from MS SQL, and we ran the SQL server, and we transformed the actual database. And then from that running database, we actually loaded to the Postgres database. So I only took a little bit of the, say, around 25 tables to migrate that is already transformed. So if anyone in the audience are really interested to do end-to-end migration, we can set up a call or set up a meeting, or there's also a Git link that actually walks you through end-to-end. But if anywhere you start, then I'm here to help. But yes, the thing that we made, we cover almost everything, including the POC that I did for Pearl chain.
Mhm.
But yes, then only the transformation part we missed. If you need on that part, please do let us know.
Galjan, do you mind changing your name to your email address or putting it in there also so people watching this can reach you?
Sure. You mean in the chat?
Well, no. Like the little video, if you click on your name, you should be able to, or the little three dots on your
Oh yes.
yeah, and just change your name to your email address.
Sure.
So if somebody's watching this in the future, they can they can drop you a note. You'd be very surprised on who will watch this in the future, and you will find people to reach out to you.
Okay. Sure.
So same question to you, Robbie. In your presentation, was there something that you be doing to the constraints? Because every conference has constraints. Is there something that you missed that you wish you could have highlighted or told a little bit more?
Well, I'm going to be selfish here, but one of the things I didn't really emphasize is what we do as Pearl chain with this database.
Okay.
So I'd like to spend a minute explaining that, because we have a really cool supply chain optimization solution that is basically where we create a digital twin of people's companies, of people's supply chain, both on for manufacturing, purchasing processes in one factory or in a network of factories across one company or multiple. And our database, the Postgres database, stores actually all these events and allows to plan the future and to help people make decisions in their supply chain. So that's what we do as Pearl chain, both on the enterprise, the plant level, and also on the level of machine integration. So if any people are looking up our website, are interested to know what we are doing there, and then for which nice companies we are doing that, and they can also certainly contact me on LinkedIn.
Nice.
And then they can see what is actually this data doing in that database. And why, for example, performance is a key element of us, because we are manipulating quite a lot of data in quite short time frames.
Nice. Do you mind changing your name also, Robbie, to your LinkedIn, so people can see this, and if they're watching it at a later date, they can reach out to you?
I can try.
Yeah, I realize it's a little bit of a. Unfortunately, I don't have a really good way of capturing this information, and being able to put it apart from putting it on like your name or whatever, and then it doesn't actually become a link inside the StreamYard. So if I put like your
I understand.
your LinkedIn, like there's no way to click on it, and that actually you should see some of the URLs we put in this thing. It's like really, really long, and I'm just like, this is no, just email addresses. It's easy.
You would think that they have solved this by now, isn't it?
Yeah, you would think. Oh, wonderful. Well, so I feel pretty good about we've had this conversation. And thank you so much for joining me. I've not seen any questions jump in. I was genuinely expecting some people to jump in and ask, because databases are the heart and soul of every software project. Like if you don't have any data, you're not going to get very far, right?
Yeah.
So I was genuinely expecting a lot of people. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, this is a special format, special times for people. You also find a lot of people on the internet, obviously.
Yep.
So there might be a reason why. But still, if you're looking to migrate to the cloud, which is still not only a trend, but still a very viable option for many people in their modernization and journeys of their maybe legacy systems, or not so legacy but the existing systems, then evaluating a move to Postgres in the cloud is definitely an option. You don't have to stick with your old solution that you might have. And indeed, if you are maybe today running on something like MySQL and you're looking for something more enterprise level with full failover, with scalability, with partitioning, for example, then then Postgres is also definitely an option. So if we at least inspired some people and maybe similar requirements than we had, or similar demands, then I think we already did a good job here. Huh?
Perfect. That's awesome. And I don't think we can end on a higher note than that. And that's amazing to hear. Well, thank you so much for your time. And if you can, hopefully some people will reach out to you. Otherwise, have a good evening and have a good afternoon. Gentlemen.
Yeah. You too. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. And that is the office hours for today. So please come back tomorrow. We will have more people coming in to talk about their presentations and their passions that they're talking about. Hopefully you learned something. If you didn't, you can always reach out to me at JJAsgar and on Twitter, and we can see where we missed. But otherwise, we'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.